I stood outside the tall iron gates of the house I once called home, a place that never really felt like mine. The funeral was over, the guests were inside, and my father's voice still echoed in my head, though I hadn't heard it in person. For weeks, the wind tugged at my black coat as I hesitated. I wasn't sure why I came. Maybe I wanted closure. Maybe I wanted to prove to myself that I'd moved on. Or maybe, somewhere deep inside, the parts I didn't like to admit still existed. I hoped he had remembered me in the end. The truth was, I took care of him during his final days. Not James, not Alyssa, me, the daughter he barely spoke to for a decade. I was the one holding his hand when the nurses stepped out of the room. I was the one reading him old poems when he could no longer read them himself. I was the one cleaning up the mess his once mighty hands could no longer manage. But none of that would matter to the people inside. I stepped into the foyer, greeted by polite nods and cold glances. James, in his sharp suit, gave me a quick glance and turned away. Alyssa avoided eye contact entirely. No surprise. The family room was filled with the sound of low conversations, clinking glasses, and artificial mourning. I stood near the doorway, unnoticed until Mr. Harris, our family lawyer, tapped his glass with a spoon. "Everyone," he said, voice firm but gentle. "Thank you for being here today. I know emotions are heavy, and I appreciate your time. Before we conclude this afternoon, as per Mr. Whitmore's final instructions, I will now read the contents of his will." He opened the brown leather folder, pulled out a neatly typed document, and began. "I, Jonathan Whitmore, being of sound mind and body." The usual formalities. I didn't care for the legal language. I cared about the part where he might say my name. Just once. That would be enough. "To my son, James Whitmore, I leave the ownership of Whitmore & Co., my 45% share, including all residual rights and profits." James smirked. "Of course. To my daughter, Alyssa Whitmore, I leave the estate in upstate New York, including all furnishings, vehicles, and securities attached to the property." Alyssa pretended to be modest, but I saw the flash of triumph in her eyes. I waited. The room was silent. Then Harris cleared his throat. "That concludes the contents of the will." My stomach twisted. "That's it?" I asked, louder than I meant to. All eyes turned to me, some shocked, some entertained. "There must be a mistake," I continued. I was. With him, at the end. I was, he told me. "I'm sorry, Miss Whitmore," Mr. Harris said gently. "That is what was signed, sealed, and registered." I laughed, a short, bitter sound. "So I get nothing? Not even a mention?" James folded his arms. "Maybe Dad didn't appreciate traitors who ran off and came back just to play nurse." Alyssa added with a sweet venom, "You always wanted more than you gave, Rachel." I clenched my fists, breath catching. They didn't know. They didn't want to know. Tears threatened to rise, but I forced them down. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction. I turned toward the door. "Miss Whitmore," Mr. Harris called after me. I stopped. He lowered his voice. "Would you mind staying for a moment? I need a private word." I followed him to a side room, my pulse racing with confusion and hope. He closed the door and pulled a small black envelope from his briefcase. "What is that?" I asked, eyeing it. He handed it to me. "Your father left this with me. Specific instructions only to be opened by you, and only after the will was read publicly." My hands trembled as I took it. My name was scrawled across the front in my father's handwriting. I hadn't seen it in so long, and somehow it still made my chest ache. He said. Mr. Harris continued that the truth isn't always what's written in ink. I nodded slowly, slipping the envelope into my coat pocket. "Thank you," I whispered as I stepped back outside. The clouds broke just slightly, letting through a sliver of light. I didn't know what the letter said. I didn't know what he left or didn't leave. But for the first time that day, I felt something I hadn't in years. A pull, a door creaking open, and somewhere in my gut. I knew this story wasn't over yet. I sat in my car for a long time before. Opening the envelope, the world outside was still mourners, leaving in black coats. The rustle of trees, the occasional laugh from a cousin I hadn't seen in 10 years. I turned away from it all and focused on the letter trembling in my fingers. It was sealed with a small, wax stamp, something Dad always used for important things. I cracked it open and unfolded the heavy paper, his familiar scrawl leaping off the page like a whisper from beyond. My Rachel, if you're reading this, then you already know how the world sees things and how I chose to let them see. I'm sorry, not for the way it looks, but for not warning you. I needed them to believe what they heard in that room. But you and I, we know the truth. In the drawer beneath my old vinyl collection, the blue one with the torn spine, you'll find the real will, my final one. The one no one else knows about. The public version was necessary. For now, trust Harris, he'll help you once you have it. But you must act quickly. I'm proud of you. More than I ever told you aloud. You came back when it mattered, and that matters more than titles or money. I love you, Dad. I stared at the page, reading it twice, then again. My hands were shaking. My heart was pounding like a drum. He did leave something for me. He knew. He hadn't forgotten me. He hadn't abandoned me. A breath I didn't know I'd been holding escaped as tears welled in my eyes. Not of sadness, but of relief, of something like being seen after years of invisibility. I started the car. His apartment was only 20 minutes away, the one he'd moved into after selling our childhood home. James and Alyssa never visited there. Said it was beneath the family image. Good. That meant it might still be untouched. I parked fast and didn't waste time with the elevator. I ran up the stairs to the 3rd floor. The letter still clutched tightly in my coat pocket. The key still worked. The scent of old wood, dust, and faint aftershave greeted me as I stepped in. His place was neat, but lived in. A record sat on the player. It's the same one I used to play when I was 10. Frank Sinatra. My way. I headed straight for the shelf. 3rd row down, left side. I found it. The blue vinyl with the torn spine. My fingers dug underneath it. Nothing. I checked behind it. Still nothing. Come on, I whispered, heart racing. Then, just as I was about to give up, I noticed a loose bottom beneath the shelf, thin, almost invisible. I pried at it with my nails and felt it lift. Beneath it sat a thin black folder. My breath caught. I pulled it out. Inside was a handwritten will, dated just 2 weeks before his passing. To my daughter, Rachel Whitmore, I leave all of my personal accounts, my shares in Whitmore & Co., and exclusive ownership of the Midtown property as a gesture of love and acknowledgement for her care, loyalty, and the forgiveness she extended to me in my final days. There it was, everything he had remembered. He had honored me. In secret, I wiped my eyes and stood frozen for a moment before the reality hit me like a brick. This changed everything. This changed everything. And also, it changed nothing. Because legally, this wasn't registered. Not yet. I needed Harris fast. I grabbed the folder and ran the next morning. I sat across from Mr. Harris in his office. It was calm, professional, but his eyes flickered when I slid the handwritten will across the desk. He read it slowly. Then again, when he finished, he leaned back in his chair and sighed. He really did it, he said quietly. He told me he might, but I didn't think. Can this be executed? I asked. He nodded. It will take time. There will be resistance, especially from your siblings. I don't care, I said. I don't want revenge, but I want what he left for me. Of course, Harris said, and you will get it legally. But I must advise you to keep this quiet until we file. If James or Alyssa find out now, they'll try to block it. They'll claim forgery, manipulation. They would, I said bitterly. They always painted me as the outsider. Mr. Harris folded his hands. You have somewhere safe to stay? I nodded. Double quotes good, because once this becomes public, things may get uncomfortable. He wasn't wrong. That night, I returned to my apartment and found a message from Alyssa waiting on my voicemail. I don't know what you're playing at, Rachel, but I saw you leave with Harris today. If you're trying to steal what we deserve, think again. You're not fooling anyone? Not this time. I deleted the message and sat in the dark. I didn't want a war, but something told me. One had already begun. The days that followed were eerily quiet. Mr. Harris began the legal process to validate the will. I filed documents, signed papers, met with a notary under strict confidentiality. I should have felt relieved, vindicated even, but something about the silence felt too ... perfect, especially from James. He hadn't called, hadn't texted. Alyssa, at least, had the nerve to threaten me. James? Nothing. And James never did nothing. I stood on my apartment balcony one night, the city lights flickering below, the buzz of traffic barely breaking through, the thoughts swirling in my mind. I remembered being 12, James telling me to keep quiet when he broke Mom's favorite vase. I did. I covered for him, cried for it, got punished for it. I remembered being 19, how he convinced Dad that I'd stolen money from his study. I hadn't. But by then, Dad was so distant, he didn't even ask my side. I was the disappointment. Always, I told myself this time would be different. I had proof. I had the law. But James had power, and charm, and secrets. 3 days later, I got an email from an anonymous sender, no subject, no message. It's just a PDF attachment. I hesitated before clicking it open, heart already racing. It was a legal draft. Petition to contest a will, filed by James Whitmore and Alyssa Chen Nee Whitmore. The claim: Rachel Whitmore, being estranged from the family for several years and known to have a history of manipulative behavior and mental instability, coerced or falsified a private document purporting to be the late Raymond Whitmore's final testament. I blinked, reading it again. Mental instability. My chest tightened. That wasn't just a legal move. That was personal. That was war. I called Harris immediately. She's contesting the will, I said. They're saying I forged it. I'm mentally unstable. I received the same documents, he said calmly. We expected this. They're going to smear me. They're going to try, but this isn't high school, Rachel. We have timestamps, ink testing, your father's handwriting history, witnesses from the notary office. Your siblings will make noise, but we have the law. I didn't feel reassured because James never fought fair. That night, I received a call from someone I hadn't heard from in 10 years. Lena Harper, my former best friend, Rachel. Lena? I asked, stunned. I saw the news. James is spreading things online, stories, threads about you. The kind that get attention. What kind of stories? She paused. That you were in a psych ward. That you were cut off for stealing. That you tried to hurt yourself once? Are those? Only one of those is true, I said coldly. I was depressed after Mom died. James made it worse. I figured she said I just wanted to say I'm sorry for not reaching out sooner. Her voice softened. If you need anything, I'm here. I still remember the girl who saved a stray cat at 12 and punched a bully for pushing me in 8th grade. I laughed softly, my throat tight. Thanks. That girl's still here, just angrier now. Good, because it looks like you're going to need her. The next morning, I woke to an explosion of alerts. Hashtag Rachel Thofakers was trending. Hundreds of comments. Thousands of shares. James had leaked an old video of me, crying in a hospital gown. Whispering nonsense after Mom's death. It was private, confidential, but he had it. He'd weaponized. My worst moment. The internet devoured it. Entitled Brat Fakes a Will. This girl looks crazy, not trustworthy. Another gold digger exposed. I stared at the screen, numb. The world believed him. Because he wore the suit. Because he smiled in public. because he always looked composed, like a man raised for the boardroom. And me, I looked like grief. Harris called that afternoon. I'm filing a cease and desist for the online content. But Rachel, what? This is bigger than a legal case now. It's public opinion, and unfortunately, that matters. I stayed silent. We could go to the press, he added. On your terms. Tell your side. Would they listen? Not all of them, but some will, and that's enough. That evening, I stood in front of a camera. I didn't wear makeup, didn't wear a power suit. I wore the same sweater I'd worn the night Dad and I made peace. I looked into the lens, took a breath, and told the truth about the lost years, the silence, the blame, the day. I almost gave up in the night Dad found me crying on a park bench and said, I failed you. I told him he made it right, privately, quietly. And I told them James never forgave him for it. Maybe I'm not the perfect daughter, I said at the end, but I was there when it mattered. And sometimes that's the only truth that counts. Uploaded it myself and I waited. The video was up 2 minutes past, then 5, then 10. A few likes, a few retweets, one comment. If this is true, James is a monster. It wasn't viral, not yet. But it was honest, and maybe, just maybe, it would shift the tide. I sat in the living room, lights off, my phone in hand. It was well past midnight, and the city outside was unusually quiet, like it was waiting with me. And then, ... knock, knock. I froze. A slow, heavy knock. 3 more. I crept toward the door, heart in my throat. I wasn't expecting anyone, not at this hour. I peeked through the peephole, James. I stepped back. Another knock, then his voice calm, cold, low. Rachel, open the door. I didn't. I just want to talk. You made that clear when you want. Put my hospital video online, I replied, voice shaking. I'll explain everything, please. Just open the door. Silence stretched between us. And then something shifted in his tone. You think this is over? You think that little sob story will change what's about to happen? You have no idea who you're dealing with? His words landed like a blade. In the dark, and then he was gone. 3 days later, I got an email from an anonymous sender, no subject. No message. Just a PDF attachment. I hesitated before clicking it open, heart already racing. It was a legal draft. Petition to contest a will, filed by James Whitmore and Alyssa Chen Nee Whitmore. The claim, Rachel Whitmore being estranged from the family for several years and known to have a history of manipulative behavior and mental instability. Coerced or falsified a private document purporting to be the late Raymond Whitmore's final testament. I blinked, reading it again. Mental instability. My chest tightened. That wasn't just a legal move. That was personal. That was war. I called Harris immediately. She's contesting the will, I said. They're saying I forged it. I'm mentally unstable. I received the same documents, he said calmly. We expected this. They're going to smear me. They're going to try, but this isn't high school, Rachel. We have timestamps, ink testing, your father's handwriting history, witnesses from the notary office. Your siblings will make noise, but we have the law. I didn't feel reassured because James never fought fair. That night, I received a call from someone I hadn't heard from in 10 years. Lena Harper, my former best friend, Rachel. Lena? I asked, stunned. I saw the news. James is spreading things online, stories, threads about you. The kind that get attention. What kind of stories? She paused. That you were in a psych ward. That you were cut off for stealing. That you tried to hurt yourself once? Are those? Only one of those is true, I said coldly. I was depressed after Mom died. James made it worse. I figured she said I just wanted to say I'm sorry for not reaching out sooner. Her voice softened. If you need anything, I'm here. I still remember the girl who saved a stray cat at 12 and punched a bully for pushing me in 8th grade. I laughed softly, my throat tight. Thanks. That girl's still here, just angrier now. Good, because it looks like you're going to need her. The next morning, I woke to an explosion of alerts. Hashtag Rachel Thofakers was trending. Hundreds of comments. Thousands of shares. James had leaked an old video of me, crying in a hospital gown. Whispering nonsense after Mom's death. It was private, confidential, but he had it. He'd weaponized. My worst moment. The internet devoured it. Entitled Brat Fakes a Will. This girl looks crazy, not trustworthy. Another gold digger exposed. I stared at the screen, numb. The world believed him. Because he wore the suit. Because he smiled in public. Because he always looked composed, like a man raised for the boardroom. And me. I looked like grief. Harris called that afternoon. I'm filing a cease and desist for the online content. But Rachel, what? This is bigger than a legal case now. It's public opinion. And unfortunately, that matters. I stayed silent. We could go to the press, he added. On your terms. Tell your side. Would they listen? Not all of them, but some will, and that's enough. That evening, I stood in front of a camera. I didn't wear makeup, didn't wear a power suit. I wore the same sweater I'd worn the night Dad and I made peace. I looked into the lens, took a breath, and told the truth about the lost years, the silence, the blame, the day. I almost gave up in the night Dad found me crying on a park bench and said, I failed you. I told him he made it right, privately, quietly. And I told them James never forgave him for it. Maybe I'm not the perfect daughter, I said at the end, but I was there when it mattered. And sometimes that's the only truth that counts. Uploaded it myself and I waited. The video was up, 2 minutes passed, then 5, then 10. A few likes, a few retweets, 1 comment. If this is true, James is a monster. It wasn't viral, not yet. But it was honest, and maybe, just maybe, it would shift the tide. I sat in the living room, lights off, my phone in hand. It was well past midnight, and the city outside was unusually quiet, like it was waiting with me. And then, knock, knock. I froze. A slow, heavy knock. 3 more. I crept toward the door, heart in my throat. I wasn't expecting anyone, not at this hour. I peeked through the peephole, James. I stepped back. Another knock, then his voice calm, cold, low. Rachel, open the door. I didn't. I just want to talk. You made that clear when you want. Put my hospital video online, I replied, voice shaking. I'll explain everything, please. Just open the door. Silence stretched between us, and then something shifted in his tone. You think this is over? You think that little sob story will change what's about to happen? You have no idea who you're dealing with. His words landed like a blade in the dark. And then he was gone. One of the leaked emails, likely from Melissa, exposed a message James had sent the PR team. Make her look like a gold-digging orphan with daddy issues. The internet erupted. Suddenly, I wasn't just fighting for a piece of my father's legacy. I had become a symbol. Harris called me late one evening. Are you sitting down? Always these days, I said, half joking. The judge wants to move to final arguments. It's fast, but he says the evidence is clear. My chest tightened, and the chances we play the last card, right? The last card. He paused. You. The next day, I took the stand. The courtroom was packed, cameras in the back. Eyes on me like I was a flame in a dark room. I swallowed. My father and I weren't close in his final years. I began. That's true. And for a long time, I blamed him. I thought he'd picked James, chosen his perfect son over his complicated daughter. I looked down, then back up. But the truth is, I walked away too. I thought I could outrun the pain, until I got the call that he was dying. I paused to steady myself in those last days. We talked, really talked. He cried. He told me he made mistakes. That he let James control too much. That he didn't know how to fix it, but he wanted to try. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a small, folded piece of paper. This is the note he left me. I found it in a book I took from his room after he passed. I read aloud. Rachel, I don't know if you'll ever forgive me, but I need you to know I never stopped thinking about you. I let fear guide too many decisions. Don't let James do the same. Fight for what's rightfully yours. Gasps rippled through the room. Even the judge leaned forward. I folded the paper and set it down. I'm not here for money, I said. I'm here for the truth, for my father's name. And for every daughter who was told she was less than until she proved she was more. When I stepped down, I saw James's face twist not in anger. In panic. For the first time, he realized I wasn't bluffing. I wasn't breaking, I was winning. The judge called for a recess and announced that the final ruling would be delivered the next morning, outside. Reporters swarmed. One asked Rachel, "Do you think justice will be served?" I smiled softly. It already is. The truth is out. That night I didn't sleep. Not out of fear but clarity. I didn't need everything my father left behind. I just needed the world to know he hadn't forgotten me, and that James couldn't erase me. No matter how hard he tried. The next morning. Everyone was present. James, his sleek lawyers, Lissa seated behind them, head lowered, silent. I sat alone, hands folded. The judge entered and cleared his throat. I've reviewed the evidence, both the original and the earlier will. I've examined the handwritten notes and heard both parties. He looked at James first, while the official will names you as sole heir. The context and testimonies provided show a clear pattern of manipulation and control. Further, the plaintiff has provided compelling proof of the deceased's intent to amend the decision. Key turned to me. I rule in favor of Rachel Miller. K. The estate will be divided according to the amended draft 50-50. Silence. Then gasps. James stood. You can't be serious. The judge gave him a cold stare. Sit down, Mr. Carter. James did. For once, without power, without plan. Just a man caught in the truth. Outside, Harris hugged me. You did it? No, I said quietly. We did. Reporters shouted questions. But I ignored them. I walked down the steps of that courthouse like I was walking out of a cage. The world looked brighter. The wind didn't bite, and for the first time in years, I was free. Victory was a strange thing. I had imagined it for so long, dreamt about the day I would walk out of that courtroom. My name cleared, my voice heard. But when it happened, it was quiet, no fireworks, no dramatic soundtrack. Just the wind brushing through my hair and the sun warming my face as if to whisper, it's over now. People congratulated me, strangers, old friends, even distant relatives I hadn't heard from in years. My inbox flooded. Social media turned me into a symbol, the daughter who fought back. But deep down, it wasn't about fame or validation. It was about reclaiming what had been taken from me. My story, my truth. A week passed. James didn't speak to the media, but rumors swirled his board was pressuring him to step down from the company temporarily. Investors were uneasy. Shareholders even more so when someone builds an empire on a lie. The foundations tremble when the truth rises. I didn't want to gloat, didn't want revenge. I wanted peace. But life, as I was learning, rarely lets you rest that easily. 1. Rainy afternoon, as I packed up a few things from the hotel room I'd called home during the trial. My phone buzzed. A name I hadn't expected. Alyssa. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then answered. Her voice was softer than I remembered. Rachel. Can we talk? I hesitated. Why now? Because I think I made a mistake, and I'm tired of pretending I didn't. We met at a small cafe outside the city, neutral ground. Alyssa looked different. No heavy makeup, no designer. Blazer? Just a hoodie and jeans. Human. She fidgeted with her coffee cup before speaking. I didn't mean for it to go that far, C said, eyes lowered. At first, it was just work. James was charming, confident, powerful. He made it easy to believe everything he said. And when did that change? I asked. She exhaled. The day he told me to fake a signature. My eyes narrowed. What? She nodded slowly. The final will. The one that named only James. He said your father had mentally deteriorated and that his clarity was in question. So he asked me to help make sure everything looked solid. My stomach twisted. He forged it. I whispered, yes. I sat back in my chair. The revelation burned through me like wildfire. I'm sorry, Rachel. I know that doesn't mean much now. But I wanted you to know before I go to the authorities. You're confessing. I gave a sad smile. I already lost everything. Might as well reclaim my conscience. I nodded slowly. Maybe redemption wasn't a myth. Maybe it just took courage and timing. The next morning, news broke. James Carter under investigation for forgery and fraud. It was everywhere, and this time, I didn't need to say a word. The world already knew. Days later, I visited my father's grave. It was quiet, peaceful. The wind carried the scent of damp earth and wildflowers. I stood there for a long time, reading the engraving over and over. Thomas Miller, loving father, visionary, human. I placed a single sunflower beside his headstone. You messed up, said, almost laughing. A lot. Silence, but you tried at the end. And that matters. The air felt lighter, like maybe he heard me. Back in the city, the company board reached out. They offered me a CETA non-executive position, symbolic at first. They said it was good optics. I almost said no, but Harris stopped me. Sometimes the best way to change a legacy is from inside it. So I accepted. Not for James, not even for my father, for myself. 1 month after the verdict, I moved into a modest apartment. My own space. My own name on the lease. Evelyn came over with wine and takeout. We sat on the floor, surrounded by unopened boxes, laughing. You know what I realized? She said between sips. What? You never asked for any of this? But when it came, you didn't run. I smiled. Running never really worked for me anyway. That night, I sat by the window, watching the city glow below. A new chapter had begun. Not clean, not perfect, but mine. I opened my laptop and stared at the blinking cursor. Then I began to write. My name is Rachel Miller. I was kicked out with $10 and no warning. I came back to find the truth, and in the process, I found myself. This isn't a story about revenge. It's about reclamation. It's about what happens when the girl they buried learns how to rise. I stood at the edge of the auditorium stage, looking out at the sea of unfamiliar yet expectant faces. Business leaders press, employees some loyal to my father, others who barely knew me. This was the first annual summit for Miller Innovations since the scandal broke, and they had asked me to give the keynote. I didn't plan to say yes, but then again, I hadn't planned for any of this, not the betrayal, not the courtroom, not the name they tried to erase. Yet here I was, alive, standing, ready. I took a deep breath and stepped up to the podium. Cameras flashed. The room hushed. I could feel my heart pounding, but my voice didn't tremble. Good morning, I began. My name is Rachel Miller. Some of you know me as the girl who was written out of her own family's story. Others only saw the headlines. But today, I'm just here to tell the truth. A pause. In this very building, decisions were made that cost people jobs, trust, and almost an entire legacy. My father wasn't a perfect man. He believed in building something that outlived him, something bigger than himself. And no forged document could take that belief away. There were murmurs, nods, some eyes widened. A few teared up. I was kicked out with $10, I said plainly. Told I didn't belong. But now I understand what they tried to take was never theirs to keep. My identity, my voice, my father's vision. I looked straight into the camera. I'm not here to punish anyone. I'm here to restore something that matters. And with that, I closed the speech. The applause was slow at first. Then it built into a standing ovation. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just breathed. A few weeks later, I visited the office my father once worked in. It was now being converted into a small museum space, a tribute to his early days, his ideas, and the people who helped him grow the company. I stood in front of a photo of us. I was 8, holding a wrench, sitting in his lap. His arms were around me, innocent times. For a moment, I missed the man I used to think he was. Then I let him go, not with bitterness, but with peace. James Carter was formally indicted. The charges included fraud, coercion, forgery, and obstruction. He pled guilty to avoid a trial. He didn't fight, and honestly, I think he was just tired. He would serve time. But that was no longer my concern. His story was his own. Mine had just begun. I started writing a book. Not a memoir. A guide for women like me, cut off, counted out, underestimated. Each chapter told a part of my journey, but also offered tools to fight back without losing yourself in the process. The title: $10 and a Name. How I Bought Back My Life. It went viral within a month. Book clubs picked it up. Talk shows invited me. Podcasts quoted me, but the best part? Emails from girls, some just 16, telling me your story gave me courage. That meant more than any victory in court. I bought a house. Not big, not flashy, just safe. It had a porch. It's a sunflower garden. And a reading nook by the window where I curled up every evening with tea and silence. One morning, Evelyn came by with a giant envelope. "You got it," she beamed, waving it like a golden ticket. I opened it slowly. It was the final confirmation from the court. The name Rachel Miller was officially reinstated on all legal, financial, and family documents. It was mine again. I traced my fingers across the letters dot. Not because I needed permission, but because it felt whole. That night, I hosted a small dinner. Just Evelyn, Harris, and a few close friends who stuck around through everything. We toasted with sparkling cider and laughed until it hurt. Harris raised his glass toward me. To Rachel, the girl who turned $10 into a legacy. I smiled, but this time it wasn't forced. It was free. Before bed, sat by the window, staring at the moonlight on the floor. I thought about that Datha one. I was kicked out. How it broke me. How it birthed me. How it forced me to become someone I never knew I could be. And I whispered, thank you. Not to them, to the storm. Because without it, I would have never learned how to build a home.